look at you guys.
This is something.
Look at you guys, right? We have an Ortiz, a Claritas, and a Cohen. This is like International Day in middle school.
It's one big happy family.
We all should have brought some fruit to share, you know? So, well, but that's kind of a testament to, to the diversification, I would say, in New York. I mean, it is, do you feel that in the New York marketplace, selling group benefits is easier or more difficult because of that?
I mean, I think it presents different challenges because now you're dealing with different personalities, different types of people, different circumstances that everyone's working on. So, from that perspective, I think we just, as salespeople, have to continue to educate ourselves and become aware of what is going on out there in the marketplace. I think that's probably the most prevalent thing that I've seen, is that you've got to be more aware of your environment, the scenario and the situations that are on there, and the different personalities, because every person you speak to at the end of the day is gonna bring to light a different point, a different perspective. And for you to adapt to that perspective, I think is key in order to still maintain being successful.
I only bring that up because for most of the carriers that I've spoken to, New York is not their number one selling goal territory. And I always found it to be odd, What do you think about that?
So I can speak to, at Shelterpoint, we have a predominant book of small group business. And when I say small group, it's under 50, under 100 lives. And that's by virtue of our disability block. And we try and go after the ancillary. And as the economy does well, people want to buy some ancillary benefits, dental, vision, life insurance, and we've risen the tide with the economy. And to your point, Louis, we feel that the relationship is really the focal point of the sale. So we have field reps that are working the territories in the boroughs in Long Island and Westchester, and they know those storefront brokers. And there's still storefront brokers out there, even though everybody's buying up everybody today, that there's a relationship and there's an education and how to go about that sale.
Which is more unique, I would say, in the tri-state area than anywhere else in the United States, without a doubt. That's why I thought that, it's unique because, again, very diverse. And I think it's probably harder to be a sales rep where we are, in my opinion, than in any other territory in the United States.
It's tough because you want to have that strong relationship, and you want to bond with that broker in Flushing, or that broker in Chinatown, or in the Bronx, and you want to have that relationship. But then you still have to play, you're still working for Shelterpoint. You still have to kind of be, I guess, neutral at some point. You can't, you want to help, sure, but you don't want to overhelp. I mean, I guess that's a better way of saying it, right? Yeah.
Well, I think the other piece of that is too, it's like you want to be neutral, but then again, you want to try to stand out a little bit too, because there's so much competition out there. I mean, there's so many different players in this market space that are doing the exact same things that we're doing on a day in, day out basis. So it's like we've got to figure out, okay, sending up a follow-up email, checking in on an opportunity, or even just acknowledging an opportunity. Sometimes some of the subtle, more smaller things go a longer way than I think people think. And I think in our market space, acknowledging those little pieces, those little details, it helps us to go a longer way at the end of the day.
You're coming up on 11 years at Shelterpoint.
Yep.
Right? There's been a lot of changes in 11 years. I mean, number one, your company went through a name change. A bigger deal also was the exiting of Zurich 7 years ago, this past October, almost right around
7
this time.
years, wow.
Well, it was right around the time of Hurricane Sandy.
Yep.
So that's how I remember that, and we had sat down with some executives at your company. I remember getting that call, and my father and I sitting down, and we did a block transfer deal to, at that time, it was First Rehab. So explain to me, how did they get into the name change? What was the marketing efforts behind that? Was that a bear to do? Because that's a big undertaking.
It was a huge undertaking, and it's funny because I'm at the company 11 years, and even before that, I knew First Rehab because I was on the property and casualty side, and a lot of the property and casualty brokers were selling First Rehab.
Yeah, my father met you at Fiduciary.
That was my first step into the DBL space. Yeah. And you talk about relationships, that's how I think everything kind of carried forward from that meeting. But to get back to the name change, people said, why do you have that name First Rehab? Why do you have that name you got to get a different name. And so we finally changed the name. And
This is the marketplace telling you that?
the marketplace, and Rich White became CEO, and he's our leader, and the plan was to expand product and do a geo expansion as well, because we're so central in New York that we wanted to go to other places. So we said we need to have a name that's kind of a little generic, that is not a local name. And people know us as First Rehab, but we have to have something that's more on a national scope. So we had a naming convention, we had a whole...
But didn't have everything to do with the location as well?
Well,
Right? For people who are watching this outside of Long Island, explain
Yes.
what I mean.
Right down the road from our office was a road called Shelter Rock Road. And it was like, wow, that's a great name for an insurance company, Shelter Rock.
I did not know that.
And we tried to get that name, and we couldn't because of various.
Oh, really?
There was another agency called Shelter Rock Agency, and so we ended up calling it Shelterpoint. And but the whole campaign, and now so funny when we changed our name, brokers were calling us up like, well, why did you change your name? Well, we really didn't mean it. We were just busting on you. Well, so now with Shelterpoint, and it's funny, some of our stuff are still, internally at First Rehab, and I'm like, wait, First Rehab, who's that? It seems like so long ago.
It takes a long time to transition something like that.
It does.
So the other point that we forgot to mention was the Zurich transfer. So bring me back. Do you remember where we were, me, you?
I was at my desk in Great Neck at the time, and I got a call from Eugene. And Eugene says, "You're never gonna believe this. Zurich's getting out of the business." I'm like, what? He goes, "They just sent a cancellation." I said, "Why wouldn't they sell the block?" He goes, "I don't know. They're just getting out. They sent us notice." So I went into Rich and Dino, who was our COO at the time, and I gave them the news, and they jumped in a car immediately and went out to see Dave.
It was an early morning meeting that we had that, and one of the things that we had set ourselves up with at the time was our block with Zurich was predominantly enriched DBL under 50 life, and we used that I used it to my advantage at the time, because I remember my father saying, there's 8.8 million we have to transfer and over 6,000 policies. I went, oh, this is gonna be a bear. And he's like, it took us 18 months to fully convert the entire block. And I would be lying if I said we didn't lose some. I have no shame in saying we did. And I remember the way it felt was as if you were being robbed at home, and you were tied up, and you were watching people take things off of the walls, like your television, and you had nothing you can do about it because there was no assumption of the book. So I figured the best way to do is, if I'm assisting a broker transition their business, well, it really helped to my advantage with Hurricane Sandy, because most of my clients were P&C who said to me, I can't be bothered. Do it for me. So I said, hey, if we do this, could I enrich the book at the same time? Not realizing 5-6 years later, with the advent of paid family leave, that would cause a huge mitigation of my book, because I had already increased my DBL book to 2/3 of my underlife business had been, already enriched. And it helped me when I started to push my paid family leave book.